Good afternoon. My name is Josh Edwards, and I am a member of the Minnesota Concrete Council, one of the sponsors of today's webinar. Today's presentation is sponsored by concrete-related associations from Iowa, Minnesota, North Dakota, Oklahoma, South Dakota, and Wisconsin. The goal of the cooperative effort is to bring greater awareness of concrete to the design and construction communities via quality continuing education programs. This webinar is a fifth webinar in a series of 7 scheduled by this group for 2023. Before I turn things over to the presenter, I need to review a few housekeeping items. You can submit any questions by typing them into the questions pane. We'll take time to answer the questions at the end of the webinar. You can download the PDFs of the presentation via the handout section on the control panel. A copy of the presentation will also be posted to the webinar archives on MCC's website. Attendees who have fully participated in today's webinar will be issued a certificate of attendance for 1 professional development hour or 1 AIA learning unit. You must attend the majority of the presentation to receive a certificate of attendance. We will not issue partial credit. A link to the certificate will be emailed to you within 10 business days. If you provided your AIA number when you registered, your attendance will be reported to AIA electronically. If you are currently reviewing this in a group setting where only one person has logged in to GoToWebinar, by the end of the day today, please contact Priscilla to provide names and contact information for everyone present. Otherwise, she will not be able to send you certificates of attendance. The state of Minnesota does not pre-approve courses. However, to the best of our knowledge, this webinar meets their continuing education requirements. The course description and learning objectives were listed in the registration process, so I won't take time to read them now. I'm sure Kimberly will cover every one of the learning objectives and then some. Finally, let me introduce our presenter, Kimberly Kayler. Kimberly Kayler is president of AOE, Advancing Organizational Excellence, the for-profit subsidiary entity of the American Concrete Institute, representing more than 40 associations, architects, engineers, contractors, cement suppliers, and more in the industry. AOE is the industry-leading association management and organizational consulting firm. The team provides marketing consulting, specifically in sustainability communications. A frequent speaker and author of more than 3,000 articles, Kimberly was a member of the ACI Board of Direction for several years. Further, she chaired the ACI Marketing Committee as well as served on the Financial Advisory, Construction Liaison, and Membership Committees. She received her BA in Journalism from the University of Arizona, and she earned her MBA with an emphasis on leadership from Capella University. She is currently a lecturer with the University of Wisconsin MBA program. Kimberly, thank you for helping us out today, and I will give you control of the screen now.
Wonderful, Josh, thank you. I'm assuming everybody can see my screen on my end. Please jump in if for some reason you can't. Thank you so much. Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about communicating sustainability. I wish that we actually were all sitting in person, because I'd love to know what everybody's interest is related to this topic, and maybe that's something you can go ahead and put in the chat group. So first off, I want to share that I am not here today to talk to you about how to be sustainable or how to meet carbon neutrality requirements. This is really a presentation that is designed to help you from a communication standpoint. Over the last couple of years, and specifically in the last 9 months or so, we've had so many organizations, whether it's associations, cement companies, contractors, come to us and say, hey, we need help. We're being pressured to talk about sustainability, carbon neutrality, durability, resilience. We're not sure what we should be communicating or how we should communicate it. So we assembled this presentation to really handle some of these best practices. So starting out with sustainability and resiliency, why are we talking about this? And just to make sure that we're approaching this all having one common definition. You can see here a common definition that is used and has been widely accepted since 1987, especially in our industry, meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. There's obviously many other definitions of sustainability, but for the purposes of today, I throw that out for you. Low carbon concrete, which is one of the things that we all are talking about quite a bit, no matter what your role is in the design and construction industry, is just one slice of it. And when we do talk about sustainability, there's so many different factors, and I'm going to spend some time going over those as well, whether it's environment, economy, societal. And this slide actually is courtesy of Dr. Andrea Schocker. She is your speaker, I believe, next week. And I was talking to her this morning about this, and she continues it. You're in for a real treat, because I've heard her speak many times. Some of you may have as well. And every time I hear her speak, she's updated her presentation and has more to share. So highly encourage you to sign up for that if you haven't already. So in terms of sustainability, you're also going to hear me throw in the word resiliency quite a bit. We can't talk about carbon neutrality or sustainability from a communication standpoint without that resiliency being part of it too. We know that's one of the great things about concrete. It is that it is resilient, that it is durable, that it may be the only structure that's standing after a tornado or a hurricane, and that has to figure into the big sustainability picture. But all of this is very complex, it's very complicated, not only from the standpoint of figuring out what your sustainability initiatives are, but then how you communicate it. There's an overwhelming amount of information. There's a lot of complexity in our own industry. Obviously, throughout the value chain, we have varying opinions in terms of how we meet the demand, how we meet the criticism of concrete in terms of carbon neutrality, and there's a variety of different levels of understanding as well. So that makes all of this very, very complicated. So what is sustainability communications? It's the act of consciously integrating sustainability into a communication strategy. It's understanding who your stakeholders are and what you want to communicate to them. So why is this all important? Well, like anything else, we need to actually have a plan of action when we are creating communications. And the stakes are pretty high these days, just because there is such a laser focus on this topic. Anything that you are communicating really needs to be well thought out, make sure it resonates with your audiences, is identified, and you have an action plan for it. The goal is to create a common understanding of the challenges related to sustainability. So why bother with all of this? And again, my goal here is not to talk you into being sustainable or talk you into anything. I have no agenda with regard to what your sustainability or carbon neutrality initiatives are, rather how you could consider communicating it should you decide to go down that path. Well, one reason is to respond to the workforce development issues that we have in our industry. I've been a member of the concrete industry for the last 25 years, and workforce development has shown up, as a challenge for all of us every single day of that tenure I have in this industry. And we know that sustainability is a key value of the millennials. We know it is something that they look for in terms of employers. It's something that they look for in terms of companies and their footprint. I'm of course speaking in generalizations. I'm sure you have examples of millennials that maybe this doesn't resonate with, but the studies show it is something that that generation cares about. And we also have to keep in mind we have five generations in the workforce now, which is the first time we've ever had that in the history of mankind. Sustainability goals also lead to increased engagement and higher retention rates. So again, coming back to that workforce development issue, having some sort of sustainability program, sustainability footprint is really key from an employer of choice standpoint. The other reason it's real key to look at this initiative and have an action plan is simply based on the world that we live in with regards to what consumers believe in terms of how they can dictate or maybe gently urge, if you will, an organization's societal viewpoint on things. So a big shift happened during the pandemic. And those of us, consumers really shifted their mindset in terms of having the belief that they can tell an organization how they should feel about something. And I'm certainly not advocating that that's the way to go, but it's a huge shift in terms of society. Consumers view that they have a choice, that they hold organizations responsible on a lot of societal issues. So 60% of those surveyed last year said they choose brands based on societal issues, and 67% report they have the power to enforce change. So no matter what the societal issue is, and we've seen it over the last couple of years, there's a lot more public pressure from consumers to our organizations, where it used to be organizations weren't pressured to come out and have a response to a societal issue, and now there's a lot of pressure. Now, I don't advocate that your organization, your company, your association, no matter what hat you're wearing here on the call today, I don't advocate that you do have a comment or you have to have a platform for every societal issue. Please don't take that as my message. But just recognizing that there is a lot more pressure these days for your organization in terms of societal issues. Also, awareness and push for reporting has ramped up, and that may be one of the reasons that you actually chose to sign up today. You may be asked in RFPs to put in your sustainability plan, your diversity, equity, inclusion plan, and I'm going to talk a little more about that, how DEI, how equity is showing up, and the two are often interlinked in your proposals. I know of some healthcare organizations, some big wide systems, some higher education institutions, for example, that have told architects, have told contractors, don't bother submitting a proposal and responding to our RFP unless you can include your sustainability plan, because they need to show it up their ladders. They need to actually continue to show it. We know we see that from big corporate buyers in many cases. Meta, owner of Facebook, has a huge program related to carbon neutrality in the buildings and the things that they're doing and the footprint. So big change here in terms of what you're being asked to respond to in your proposals and your chance to earn work. Environmental product declarations, I know Andrea will touch a little bit on that next week. I'm sure you're all familiar with them, but we're seeing that pop up so much more as well in RFPs. Many of the DOTs, depending on what state you're calling in from, are requiring them related to different projects. So the push for reporting really has ramped up. Environmental, social, and governance, ESG. This is typically a report that is filled out by public companies, public entities, or really large organizations. Those of you that are representing cement companies on the line, chances are you have had to do ESG reporting for some time. I will spend a little time explaining a little bit more about that. And then the increasing request to track supplier diversity as well. So, that continues to show up. And again, that's linked. We're seeing that sustainability, the equity piece, the people piece of sustainability is showing up. So there is a link quite a bit with regard to sustainability and DEI metrics. So why a company should communicate about sustainability? In addition to being pressured, being asked to respond to it in your RFPs, societal norms, it is key to inform and involve and integrate sustainability into your business and your operations. It's something that chances are your employees are caring about or starting to care about. It does give you an opportunity also to differentiate yourself. And that is proven. That the link here is from Harvard Business Review, that it does allow you to have a business performance, allows you to set aside from a competitive standpoint. Helps your reputation, provided you're doing it in the right way, which we'll talk about. It can also hurt your reputation if there's any greenwashing involved. And then it does pay. And this last bullet I have here, investors are paying attention to sustainability as they look at short and long-term horizons. This has been in the news quite a bit. I believe it's Florida, and there's some other states where this has actually been called into question with regard to having ESG metrics, for example, in terms of securing financing, et cetera. So again, this presentation is not political in any way, just sharing with you that that there is a lot of instances and a lot of question related to financial metrics and how it relates to sustainability as well. With all that said, this is a very hard topic. It's hard to communicate about. Things are moving really, really fast. There's a lot of misinformation, mistrust, and then a lack of immediate benefits. Sustainability, carbon neutrality, being more resilient, none of these things are solved overnight. Fortunately, for those of us in the concrete industry, we do have a good story to tell. One of the things that Dr. Andrea Schockers mentioned to me this morning, and she'll talk about again next week, is just that because the cement industry does such a good job with metrics, we really almost had a calling card, if you will, for our government entities to look at us and just the consumers and general public in general, because we're so good at the reporting metrics, and we're now being pressured then to continue to improve on that. So all of this makes very, very complicated situation. Sustainability communications is difficult just because of the mistrust. A lot of people have been talking about sustainability for a long time. Sustainability is such a broad word, such a broad terminology that it's hard, and it has created mistrust. There is misinformation about things, and then it does require change and action. So it does, it's hard to shift mentality, especially if there's no immediate benefit. Sustainability is also not an opinion. It needs to be something that's very fact-based and scientific to resonate with your audience. And I view that as a good thing, especially for those of you on this call. We are all engineers, chemists, scientists, construction management professionals. We're used to operating in a world where truth and science-based and complex facts are actually researched and well thought out and consensus built, and then we have standards and specifications. So while this is a challenge, it is something that we are good at as an industry. And then to have a positive impact can be very, very hard, because there's the stakes are high, and there's just so much that can be done and getting started. What else is rolled into sustainability communications? Touched on this a little bit. DEI, culture, employee health and wellness, governance, code of ethics, risk management, safety, labor, and human rights. So all of those things end up showing up in different cases in different places. For example, the FHWA roadmap that came out a couple of years ago, they had the people factor under sustainability. You'll see one of those graphics later. So all of these things complicate or complement the issue as well. It's a nice segue to what may show up in a typical ESG. So again, that environmental societal governance reporting. This is typically done by publicly traded organizations or very large organizations. So if you don't fit under that category, you likely won't have to complete an ESG, but I wanted to give you a sample of what one may look like, just so you have a good feel for it. Though if you are working on big state projects, big public projects, those big higher ed institutions, et cetera, you may see ESG reports show up in that RFP. So typical things that may show up: sustainability, greenhouse gas emissions, water consumption, safety. You can see here the employee factors show up again and again and again: leadership, ethics and compliance, risk management. I've heard of ESG reports for some very big corporate buyers. I don't want to say their name, but big retail organizations, where you actually have to disclose your ownership of your firm and then where their charitable contributions go. Many of you may say, hey, that's ridiculous, I'm not sharing that information, etc. Not advocating for that in any way, just sharing that we are hearing examples of that and how it's lumped up into ESG. So what is the formula for success with all of this? Well, in order to communicate sustainability, you must do sustainability. You know, walk the walk, talk the talk. So you have to actually have something to announce, something to share. And I wanted to, pull attention here to this graphic here from the pavement industry. You can once again see all of these different factors coming together with regard to sustainability, equity, transformation, safety, etc. So getting started with your sustainability communications. First step is really creating that declaration of intent, and I'll share an example with it. But starting out with what you are announcing for your organization. What is it that you are embarking on? Have you decided that your organization, your plant, your operations are going to be carbon neutral by 2030, for example? What is your declaration of intent? And then to avoid any sort of greenwashing, it's really key to substantiate any claims. And then the next step is providing updates. So one of the key things, one of the lessons that many of us learned during the pandemic was actually how to operate in a crisis communication scenario. And we all learned quickly the importance of providing regular updates, whether it's to our employees, whether it's to our clients, other stakeholders. Again, taking political viewpoints out of it, look and think of, Minnesota governor and his daily update that people started to expect on TV at a certain time. Same with Governor DeWine in Ohio. He was at 2 o'clock every day. Not commenting on whether any of these governors did a good job or a bad job, just saying that they were really true in terms of how they provided updates with a crisis. You could look at sustainability communications as a potential crisis should you not actually have a communications plan. So having your declaration of intent and then providing regular updates on things. You don't just want to declare something and then not come back and share how things go, maybe every 6 months, every year, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. This is an example of American Highway. They manufacture products for highway transportation, bridge market, and they did a very nice piece, declaration of intent, earlier this year that tied in with the concrete industry, tied in with the PCA roadmap, and talked a little bit just about how they as a supplier are going to work towards supporting the greater industry and what their declaration of intent is, if you will. So nice example. So with the declaration of intent, one of the key things is really determining who the owner of this message is. And in our industry, as we know, our industry associations, many of them already have roadmaps. I already referred to the PCA roadmap. Concrete Pavement Association has a white paper on sustainability. Concrete Pipe has developed something similar. So there's many different touch points throughout our industry that we can pull from, whether you are an architect or an engineer, et cetera, pulling from and supporting and linking to the different industry associations and their platforms. And then internally within your own organization, a lot of different stakeholders to pull in with regard to this topic. So it's not just a marketing messaging type of situation here. I would involve HR, safety, compliance, maybe some sort of internal committee to get employee buy-in. And whether, not knowing your ownership structure, board of directors, owners of your firm, etc. So a lot of people should provide input into this because it should be something that's very holistic as part of your operational plan. And then one of your key audiences to make sure is integrated into things is employees. And this is, again, a lesson learned from crisis communications. Oftentimes, organizations do a really great job of sharing their messages externally, but not always sharing it internally. And this would be key with your employees. Last thing you want to do is declare to the general public, hey, we're going to be carbon neutral, or we're taking these other environmentally friendly initiatives with our firm, but not get the employees on board and make sure that communication is really good for them. So I know that seems obvious. We just share this slide because we see it happen over and over and over again. And the employees are like, gee, I wish I would have known we were doing that. So internal newsletter, chat groups, getting the employees engaged with sustainability metrics, maybe creating engagement with some sort of committee or focus group, and then ensuring the language emphasizes progress, not final result. And that's key not only for employees, but for your other external stakeholders as well. And then the audience of consumers in the marketplace, those that you are communicating to outside within the walls of your own firm, really key to keep the language as accessible as possible. Your customers don't want to wade through a bunch of jargon. You want to be able to speak to them and share with them information in a way that's understandable. So different ways you can do it. Again, maybe that declaration of intent followed up with other newsletters, social media, annual report that pulls in your operations and sustainability efforts, and then using third-party sources to validate your claims whenever you can is good. So with the key messages and identified, as well as understanding who your audiences are, it's key that you do put all of this into a plan. So making sure you have something to communicate is really key. Ensure you've internally addressed the elements for reporting, understanding your audiences, determining your key messages. When reporting on data, be clear. And then coming back to not commenting on every issue, as I talked about at the very beginning of this presentation, the consumer push right now for organizations to respond to all societal issues. And I'm not just talking about sustainability, I'm talking about a lot of other societal political issues. There's no need for every organization to comment on all of them. And then keeping employees and partners closely involved in that process. Where should you post your content? One of the most common questions that we do get. Social media is key if social media channels are already developed for your organization. Anything you do should be very transparent and be part of your website, maybe including in electronic newsletters. Use of video is great, brochure, annual reports, maybe some flyers. So the one thing to keep in mind in terms of success rate is use the channels that you know already work. So now is not the time, if you're launching your sustainability platform and communications efforts, to try using a different platform that hasn't been developed already yet. You can do it in conjunction, but make sure you're speaking in the channels that are already well established. So I'm going to switch gears here. We're about 27 minutes in. I probably have about another 15 minutes of talking at you, and then I want to open it up for Q&A. But I'm going to pull all of this together in a top 10 tips for communicating sustainability. So number one is really having an action plan. Again, I know it seems obvious, but as we tend to just dive into these things. Hey, we need to respond to the RFP. We need to include and write out what our sustainability plan is. Hey, we're being pressured to do something. So we do the ask, but we don't actually have a concerted plan. And what the challenge with that is that you're not on target. The next time you do it, you actually have to recreate the wheel, or you're simply editing that same document. That's really not a plan. It really just becomes more of a habit. Outlining the metrics that are important to your company and how that ties to the messages, and then clear priorities and business strategy are really key. Number two is being true to your brand. So this is really important from a transparency and a sincerity standpoint. If you remember back to some of my earlier slides about one of the challenges with regard to communicating about sustainability, environmental issues, is that there's a lack of trust. There's a lack of, and there's a lot of misinformation as well. So really being true to your brand. So what you are sharing should still look like your company. It should still have that same feel. It should still have the same sentiment that comes through. Somebody shouldn't look at it and say, gee, that was XYZ contractor, that doesn't look like them. You want to make sure that it really is true to your brand so it does resonate, and that'll help from an employee engagement standpoint as well. Great example of this is Heidelberg Materials. When they transitioned from Lehigh Hansen and their 17 other brand names, officially launched January 1 here in the United States, they weaved in their messages with regard to carbon neutrality, their environmental focus into their rebranding effort. Everything looked like Lehigh Hansen, looked like Heidelberg Materials, so they were very true to their brand in terms of the language that they used and the graphics that they used as well. So tip number 3 is keeping it simple, avoiding that kitchen sink mentality with regard to throwing everything in, over explaining things, sharing way too much information, data, charts, etc. Education is okay. Really, you know, that comes back to really understanding who your audience is and understanding that some types of communication may be good for one audience and different for another. And then not throwing around words that nobody knows. Got a smart group of folks on this call today. You know, we can talk engineering, we can talk mixed designs, etc. What does an owner really need to understand with regard to your sustainability plans and how it fits? Great example of that, Slag Cement Association, in terms of keeping things very simple, committed to a green future, durable, resilient, sustainable. Again, nice and clean, very key what they are trying to share with regards to their sustainability communications. Tip number 4 is to keep it relatable. Use storytelling whenever possible, use people. We all know we love and we gravitate towards seeing photos of people, hearing stories firsthand of people. Don't overwhelm the reader. Complex topics benefit from visualization and callouts. Great example here. This is actually VCNA or St. Mary's Cement, Prairie Materials, part of it as well. This is an example of their report they wanted to share with the general public and their employees with regards to their ESG reporting. And I think they did a really great job with it. You can see the key headlines here. Again, notice common themes. It's not just environmental, it's not just sustainability. They've got community, education, health and wellness, that people factor in here. A lot of information shared in a very easy to digest fashion. So a great example of how to do that. And then tip number 5, make it visual. Infographics, charts, bear with me. I've got several slides here to show you some examples of things. One of the things that has come out in reporting already is that people are tired of even trying to get their heads around sustainability and understand carbon neutrality because they're buried in so much data and so much information and so many pie graphs. They don't really even know how to make sense of it. So key to making it you know, easier to understand, also making it visual but avoid cliches. So sustainability isn't always green. It isn't always granola, Birkenstocks, Earth from space, the recycling logo. You know, when we look at these things, we go, oh, clip art, what are they really saying? More of the same. You know, there's no, number one, it probably doesn't actually link and fit with your brand. So it's going to look a little off to begin with. And then it does look a little trite and cliche. So use imagery whenever you can that is applicable and relevant to your industry. You don't always have to use the color green. You know, look for other ways in which you can share your message. And then samples of ineffective visuals here, you can see just a lot of content, a lot of information. We spend a lot of time studying and working with experts with regards to the best way to share information in reports, in annual reports, and ESG reports. You know, there's a lot going on here, as you can see. There's a really wonderful book. I'll follow up. I don't remember what it's called, but just talks about the importance of visuals and graphics. And there's a whole section in there about pie charts are evil. It's one of the most commonly used graphs, but it's very, very hard to read, and our brains struggle to interpret the size and slice to each of the things that we're trying to share. So if you're a lover of pie charts here, I apologize if I've stepped on your toes or burst your bubble in any way here. But from a reader standpoint, from an understanding standpoint, it's actually a very, very difficult tool to use. If you do use pie charts when you're trying to share your sustainability communications efforts and your results, a lot better ways to do it. Fewer slices, the better. Largest slice should start at the top. Don't use 3D pie charts, etc. So a couple of examples that may help in terms of the graphic part of communicating the message. Better visuals to use instead of the pie chart, horizontal and vertical bar charts here. A lot easier to understand. Our brains are able to interpret and then discern the information in a much easier fashion. And then the power of simple text as well. So here's some examples of some infographics that we've completed for clients in the last couple of years. And use of numbers, a lot of data shown right here, but you can see here how you can clearly look and your brain is able to navigate through. So other good examples of showing simple text with a lot of content here. And then just another example of the power of color and how you can use that with numbers in terms of call outs. Maybe a great idea for your sustainability report that you will someday put together. And then pre-attentive attributes and graphs, couple of examples here. Bear with me, I'm almost done through this section here. But examples of different ways in which you can share information, highlight it, and hopefully it's a little bit more palatable for the different audiences that you are communicating with. And then the importance of color. I've already talked a little bit about the tendency for anything related to sustainability to be green. And I'm sure at some point you have learned a little bit about the psychology of colors and how they're tied to different emotions or different feelings and how it's been studied. You know, this is a very broad overview in terms of color psychology, if you will, but some other ideas that you could maybe pull into your graphics, into your communications plans of different colors, the different emotions they bring about with regard to communicating with your audiences. And then eliminating distractions is really key in your efforts as well. So asking yourself, would eliminating this change anything? So all the data, all the information you have on a graph, for example, this, maybe take a moment here and study it before I move along. Is there anything that really isn't needed? And maybe ask yourself, where are your eyes, where's your brain going? Are you even able to focus on anything and pull out any trends or information? Then a couple of ideas in terms of maybe ways that you could improve it. And then another idea just to how to make it even that much simpler. So chances are you didn't sign up for this with a lecture on and anticipating a lecture with regards to visuals, but hopefully that's something you can take into your business. These aren't just my opinions, they've been studied. There's a whole science to it in terms of how we communicate and share information. Number 6, as we close out our top 10, understanding and knowing your audience. So not approaching everything with the same key messages. We all know how the information you may share with different members of the design build team would be different. How you would share information maybe with an engineer or an owner is different than maybe the information you would share with your employees. So really key to outline key messages for what's called each persona. And I'll share an example here of personas that we've developed for the Concrete Pavement Association related to their sustainability efforts. And we've got about 12 different personas outlined. We're, of course, making generalizations in terms of what these personas are, but we look at it and try and understand Who are these people? What do they know? What are their pain points? What are their goals? What are their barriers? What will actually lead them to trusting our messages? And then what are the key messages for this audience, for this persona, and some examples of potential campaigns for them. So you can see some examples here. Invite you to spend some time. It doesn't have to be sophisticated and with the graphics, but actually talk through each of your audiences in terms of what are their pain points, what do they really care about related to this sustainability issue or any type of messaging that you're trying to do from a marketing standpoint. What will get them to trust us? Where does that sincerity piece come in? And then outlining what those key messages are and what a campaign may look like. And then coming to number 7, tell the truth. I know that, with sustainability, there is a lot of concern of, hey, can we trust this product or not? And I recognize that, none of you on this call here are liars and are going to intentionally go out and lie in any sort of way. But with sustainability, it's a huge journey. So telling the truth and being transparent about where you are and maybe some pitfalls you have is great. Now, with that said, I'm not suggesting that you air any sort of dirty laundry or, sharing too much. But if you can identify something within your organization from an environmental standpoint, a sustainability standpoint, how you're approaching things, and using that as a snapshot, as a point in time, and explaining that in terms of how you were actually going to move the needle, and then communicating the progress, that sincerity, that transparency, that honesty will really go a long way. Everybody knows that, there's a lot to be done here. And so this is an opportunity just in terms of like human social science. The more that we are transparent and share what we are doing, the more trust that's actually created in terms of moving things along. So again, sustainability is a journey. Honesty goes quite a long way. Number 8 is being engaging. So creating connections, engaging, selling the positive, not using catastrophe or any sort of scare tactics in any way. We had to actually help one client combat that because somebody was trying to claim that, the dust from concrete kills and all sorts of graphics of scare tactics and all that. Certainly not in a method that actually works very well. We did a survey of the DOTs probably about 7 years ago at this point. And one of the things that they gave us feedback on is that when an engineer is calling on them, one of the things that they really appreciate is not bashing the competition, for example, and not using those scare tactics. So coming in a very positive way, showcasing where you have some strength, where you have an engaging story is the key way to go. So here's some examples of what that may look like. It may look a little bit different, than even of your traditional marketing. But instead of it being a negative campaign in any way, taking the high road and showing things very positively is good, and being very engaging, depending on who your audience is. Tip number 9 is to be different. So don't feel the need to emulate others. Create active engagement that's very unique with your audiences. Example I'm showing here is actually from Doka, the concrete formwork supplier. They have done so many things right with regard to their sustainability communications, and I invite you to actually jump on social media, follow them, get on their website. But their declaration of intent, if you go back to one of those early slides, is this campaign of on the way to net zero. The messaging here, many steps to go, hashtag on the way to net zero, and I love that. Many steps to go. So they're showcasing, hey, we have a long way to go here, but this is our point in time. This is how we're communicating it. The brand imagery that they're using here, they're using green, but it's not all green. It's very much branded to the typical Doka yellow. Nothing looks out of whack. It looks sincere and transparent for them. So, DOCA is committed to responsibly utilizing the resources needed to provide our customers with the best framework solutions possible, constantly looking for new solutions related to sustainability. We've made the goal to be net zero by 2040. So really great example. Encourage you to jump on and look at their campaign. It should give you some ideas of maybe how you can structure yours as well. And then the last tip here is we round out this discussion, and this one may be surprising, but don't overuse the word sustainable. So some studies have been done, and the companies that are doing it right, the organizations that are doing it right, don't have to use the word sustainability or sustainable all the time. They're talking about their programs, they're talking about their people, they're talking about all the other societal benefits of their programs. If you're using sustainable, sustainable, sustainable over and over and over again, it's a real challenge for the reader, and it doesn't create that sort of transparency. It sounds like you're doing a lot of talking and maybe not doing enough action, if you will. So that may be surprising, but I encourage you to maybe look at any efforts that you have already done or have in the works and consider how that fits into your programs. So in terms of summary here, tips for successfully communicating about sustainability. We've talked about how there's so many factors that play into this. Whether it's the equity piece, whether it shows up in terms of resiliency and durability, life cycle cost analysis, all of these things that we know that are key to our sustainability messaging. It's key to have a strategy in place for your organization. And that really starts with understanding your audience, that declaration of intent, as well as communicating and outlining what those key messages are. It's key to also have a presence now. So one of the things that, traditionally will hold us back is we wait until we have all the information. Especially in our industry, we tend to wait until we have the standard, till we have the spec, till we have, consensus on things. And that's not traditionally, we don't typically operate in a way where we're sharing things that are maybe in the works. So that may be a little bit out of your character or your corporate culture, if you will. So consider what would it be like if we showed a snapshot in time and explained and shared what you're working on or what you're even thinking about. The importance of visuals and graphics. And then the final thing is, again, being really true to your brand, walking the walk, talking the talk here. Silly examples, but you don't want to share big, make these big declarations of things, but kill a bunch of trees while you're making the declarations, if you will, with paper. Kind of a silly example, but really look at how you are sharing your message and then looking at it from the viewpoint of those that are receiving it as well. So with that, we are 47 after the hour. I'll invite Josh to come back on. Happy to answer any questions that anyone has. Here's my contact information. I'm happy to speak with any of you offline as well if I can answer anything for you. So Josh, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. I have a couple questions here.
Great.
So if I have a limited budget and very limited marketing staff, where can I start?
Great question. So I would encourage you to start again by gathering your team and identifying what it is that you want to communicate and what it is that you're actually doing, and then use your existing channels. You don't have to create a new fancy brochure. You don't have to create some sort of big annual report or videos if those aren't things that you're already doing. Go ahead and weave it into the communication you already have. Weave it into things that you are already doing to help keep the cost down. That's also part of just the sincerity and the transparency of it being weaved into your corporate culture, your organizational structure. Great question.
What is the connection between supplier diversity and sustainability?
Thank you for that question as well. So we are seeing in many big public agencies, many institutional buyers, when they are looking at sustainability, they're not thinking of it necessarily always as carbon neutrality or environmental footprint. They're looking at the impacts on society as well. They're also looking at the people factor. So they may weave in, you know, are your design solutions equitable? For example, is the freeway that we're putting in actually, you know, separating neighborhoods and creating, you know, poorer populations, et cetera. So looking at all of the factors related to there. You won't always see the equity piece or the people factor show up in sustainability. A lot of it depends on who your audience is and what they're asking for you, but it is lumped. You know, a couple of years ago, diversity, equity, inclusion was a huge topic. Chances are you sat in on webinars or got a lot of things that popped up in your email related to that topic. DEI is still very important, but we're seeing it show up now under the sustainability moniker. Hopefully I answered that question. If not, I'm happy to talk offline about that a little more.
Okay, you've mentioned a few times that greenwashing can be a negative. Mm-hmm. How can we be sure what we're doing is actually green?
Oh, wonderful question. So I think I'm hearing a lot related to greenwashing of a lot of products that are coming onto the marketplace that are
Correct.
making, yeah, they're making a lot of claims related to saving the day, you know, specifically related to carbon neutrality, if you will. And there's a bunch of skepticism in terms of how do we know if these products are really a good fit or not, because just the data isn't out there yet. There's not the track record for it. So to answer the question with regard to your organization and greenwashing, be able to stand behind any of the claims that you're making. You know, and that's where I think coming in small, what is your organization? Let me back up. Maybe ask, what does sustainability mean to you at your organization? How does it fit into the service you provide for your clients, and then maybe part of the bigger industry? And then from there, outline what are real actionable things that you can stand behind, that are science-based, that are proven within your own walls. If you do that, I don't think you're going to be accused of greenwashing, if you will. Most of the greenwashing we're seeing relates to products that are coming out there that aren't necessarily validated. And with that said, there's some products that are coming out right now that are validated or likely are going to be a huge success and save the day in some ways.
All right, then I got one last one for you. Says you've talked a lot about individual corporate efforts to marketing sustainability, but is there a final destination other than the consumer that is trying to consolidate this information for the entire industry?
Boy, that's a wonderful question. I think there are a couple of different organizations within our industry that are working really hard to try and tackle that. ACI Center for Carbon Neutral Concrete, NEW, is one of them. NEU, if you're not familiar with NEW, I invite you to check them out. NEW is going to be the qualifier, if you will. They're going to validate products and those claims. So, you know, I don't think sustainability messaging completely comes down to validation, but that is going to be NEW's role for sure. And they've already asked for submissions for those that want to actually submit their products for claims. So NEW would be a really great source. Obviously, we have the roadmap from PCA and then other industry associations that are working hard towards what their platforms are. Like anything else in our industry, we end up being a little fragmented. I think through NEW and through PCA, I think we have a chance to actually come together maybe more than we have on other things in the past. And I welcome other inputs on that one as well. There may be an effort that I don't know about as well.
All right, well, thank you, Kimberly, and thank you for everyone for attending today's webinar. You should receive an email with a link to your certificate of attendance within 10 business days. On behalf of the Iowa Ready Mix Concrete Association, the Minnesota Concrete Council, the North Dakota Concrete Council, the Oklahoma Ready Mix Concrete Association, the South Dakota Ready Mix Concrete Association, and the Wisconsin Ready Mix Concrete Association. We thank you for joining us today and have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Kimberly.
Thank you.